Well, this is a major storm, and you guys have covered this very well, saying that it was the first Category 5 landfall in Cuba since the 1920s. Now we're dealing with a storm that's still a menacing threat to all of the Florida Peninsula, from Jacksonville to Miami, west into Tampa, and especially Southwest Florida, the Florida Keys, we are especially concerned about. The damaging wind is a big concern. We've already seen a gust of around 75 miles per hour, well over 100 kilometers per hour in Miami at the International Airport. We're just seeing the beginning of this, though, as the sustained tropical storm force winds have yet to begin in true South Florida. We've had gusts into tropical storm and near hurricane force, but really the main event is still in Cuba. It's going to slowly push into South Florida. And if we have to name one thing that we're most concerned about, it's the storm surge as the wind shifts and blows the seawater inland up to an elevation of 8, 10, maybe 12 feet. And you multiply that into areas across all of Southwest Florida, we're talking about big problems there. Multiple meters of water into areas that typically don't have water. That means a lot of flooding in many homes.
And so behind Irma, two other storms, Geoff. We have 2 deaths in Mexico as well. What can you tell us about these storms?
Well, we had a terrible situation with Hurricane Katia, which made landfall last night in Mexico. Typically, any landfalling hurricane or typhoon of any sort is national news. We've had so much activity this week in the Atlantic that was kind of the third story. It was buried behind the coverage of Irma. And also we have Jose. Jose is out in the northeastern Atlantic, or I'm sorry, the northeastern Caribbean, moving through an area that was greatly affected by Irma just about half of a week ago. Now, if there's any good news, it's that Jose's strongest winds will stay away from places like the northern Leeward Islands. But even tropical storm force winds with a passing glance there will probably lift some debris from Irma back into the air as projectiles, which can cause a problem for those trying to recover, with Jose now in the neighborhood of the northern Leeward Islands.
What's behind these back-to-back storms, Geoff? How do we explain it?
Well, you know, this is the time of the year when we typically see the most activity. September 10th is the statistical peak of hurricane season. That's when we get the combination of very warm water as well as fairly low wind shear. In other words, the prevailing winds overhead are not all that strong this time of the year, at least in the western Atlantic. So that can allow these storms to kind of grow and dictate the environment around them and get circulating. And that's when we have these tropical waves grow into tropical storms and hurricanes. This is nothing new. There have been very active hurricane years in the past, but you know, we've had a few quieter years in a row with lesser impacts, at least in the U.S. We had big problems with Matthew in the Bahamas last year, but right now we've had 3 named storms. As of yesterday, there were 3 hurricanes on the map in the Atlantic for the first time since 2010. You had to go back 7 years to find the last time there were 3 hurricanes on the map.